Deep in the flatlands of Suffolk, England, where the gray sky seems to press down on the earth, there's something that simply shouldn't be there. If you drive along the narrow country lanes, you might miss it. You'll see only a high wall of trees and huge iron gates that have been shut for generations. But if you ask the locals, they know about it. They say it's the sleeping giant. For most of the last century, this giant was sleeping behind its walls, guarding secrets almost too heavy for the outside world. The place I'm talking about is Elvedon Hall. It's a house that seemingly refused to acknowledge time passing by. Its story isn't just about bricks or money. It's a human ego and the desperate, lonely need to be remembered forever. From the outside, the deception is perfect. It looks like a standard old-school English mansion. It looks like the kind of place where boring people drink tea and discuss the weather. But remember, that exterior is a lie. Step through the heavy oak doors and it's a different story. The smell of damp wool and old wood is gone. Instead, you're standing inside a place that looks nothing like its exterior. White marble as far as the eye can see. Intricate carvings cover every inch of stone. It's an Indian palace dropped into a muddy English field. Unfortunately, its story starts with tragedy. In the 1860s, the estate was bought by Duleep Singh. He was the last Maharaja of the Sikh Empire, a boy king stripped of his throne by the British. They took his kingdom, separated him from his mother, and dragged him to England to be a pet for Queen Victoria. They even took the famous Kohinoor diamond from him. In exchange, they gave him a pension in this patch of land in the middle of nowhere. He was a man in exile, ravaged by loss. He didn't want an English home. He wanted the palaces of Lahore that he could no longer visit. So he began to transform the house. He hired architects to turn the interior into a fantasy of the East. He covered the walls in plaster carved to look like stone. He painted the ceilings in gold. He tried to build something that he could relate to. But the Maharaja was a tragic figure in all of that luxury. He had the vision, but he was stripped of his power. He died in Paris, poor and forgotten, leaving behind a house that was half dream, half nightmare. Then came the money. The same year he died, in 1893, the house found a new master, Edward Cecil Guinness. He was a rising king of industry. He was the man behind the dark Irish beer that was taking over the world. When he walked into Elvedon and saw the fake Indian plasterwork, he didn't laugh. He didn't tear it down. He saw a challenge. Guinness wanted to prove a point. The old British aristocracy looked down on him. To them, he was just trade. His money smelled of beer and yeast and not of history. He couldn't buy their respect, but he could outspend them until they had no choice but to acknowledge him. He decided to finish what the Maharaja started, but he wouldn't use plaster. He would use the real thing, marble. But not just any type. It was tons of Carrara marble shipped all the way from Italy to this misty corner of England. He expanded the house, turning it into a luxurious fortress. The result was the Marble Hall, the terrifying heart of the house. The dome rises 80 feet above your head, tall enough to fit a modern apartment block inside. The acoustics were also strange. A whisper in one corner travels clearly to the other, meaning you can never truly have a private conversation. It was truly built to make you feel small. It was a temple to Edward Guinness's ego. By 1903, the transformation was done. Edward and his wife Adelaide hosted the most lavish parties in Britain. King George V came every year, not because he loved the Guinness family, but because the luxury was superior to even Buckingham Palace. They had electricity, central heating, and plush carpets when the royal castles were still drafty and cold. The plan was seemingly working. The beer baron had bought his way into the inner circle. But there was always a coldness underneath. The house was too big. It was an industrial machine designed to process guests, not a home to raise a family. Mirrors reflected endless corridors where you could walk for minutes without seeing a soul. The fireplaces were massive, burning entire tree trunks, yet the marble walls seemed to radiate a permanent chill. And then The clock ran out. Ambition can build a palace, but it can't stop time. The First World War shattered the illusion. The young men who worked the estate put down their serving trays and picked up rifles. Many never came back. The staff vanished, and in 1916, Adelaide died. Without his wife, Edward was just a lonely old man trapped in his marble cage. The house, built to hold hundreds, was now empty. He died in 1927, leaving the giant to sleep. The estate passed to his son Rupert. Rupert was a different breed. He wasn't interested in showing off. He looked at the palace differently, knowing the world had changed. It was the end of an era of aristocrats. Additionally, taxes were rising and servants were expensive. Rupert made a decision that saved the house, but also damned it. He didn't sell it. He didn't demolish it. He just locked the door. In 1939, as the Second World War began, the family moved into smaller cottages on the grounds. They wrapped white sheets over the furniture in the big house. They closed the shutters and turned off the water. For a brief moment during the war, the mansion woke up, but not for parties. The U.S. Air Force used it as the headquarters. From kings to American officers in muddy boots stomping across Italian marble, planning bombing raids on Germany. When the soldiers left in 1945, the silence returned. For nearly 40 years, it simply sat there. Nothing moved inside, except the moths, who were slowly eating away at Edwardian coats and lavish dresses. Newspapers from the 1930s lay on tables, yellowing and crumbling. The air grew stale and heavy. The Guinness family focused on the farm, turning the land into a massively successful business. They grew potatoes and onions while the marble palace stood in the middle of the fields. It became a local legend. People said the tables were still set for dinner. They said the ghosts still walked in it. But the truth was simple and sadder. It was just empty. In 1984, the doors finally opened. This time, it wasn't for a king or for an army. It was for an auctioneer. Christie's came to sell off the contents. Thousands of curious people came to see the inside of the sleeping giant. The furniture was sold. The paintings were taken down. The house was stripped bare, leaving only the marble skeleton. But a house like this, it doesn't die easily. It found a new way to exist. Elveden Hall became a movie set. When you watch the masked orgy scenes in Eyes Wide Shut, you're looking at its interiors. The eerie, cult-like atmosphere of the film fits the house perfectly. It's also been used in Tomb Raider and The Crown. It plays the role of palaces in foreign lands because it doesn't look like England. Today, the house is owned by the 4th Earl of Ivy. The estate is a thriving business. The fields produce vegetables for supermarkets across the UK. But the house itself remains locked. Yet again, it stands in the middle of the flat fields. It's a monument to an ambition that no longer makes sense. Edward Guinness wanted to live forever through his creation. In a way, he succeeded. The house is still there, defying time. The sleeping giant serves as a warning. We spend our lives building things, regardless of whether we're talking about careers, reputations, or houses, hoping they'll give us meaning. We hope they'll make us permanent. Elveden Hall proves that you can build the biggest, the most expensive, most beautiful thing in the world, and in the end, it can still just be a pile of cold stones in a foggy field.